Good afternoon. I'm Edward Nelson Fell. My wife Ann and I purchased land on which Fellsmere is situated in March 1910 and formed the Fellsmere Farms Company that year. The company started developing the town of Fellsmere in early 1911. After the population steadily grew, the townspeople recognized the need for a church. In 1913, the Fellsmere Union Church, now the Fellsmere Community Bible Church on the corner of North Hickory Street and County Road 512 was built. It was a non-denominational church. By 1914, there was enough Methodists and Episcopalian residents in Fellsmere that wanted a church of their own. I am standing in front of the first Methodist Episcopal Church, now the Fellsmere Historical Church, the second oldest church in Fellsmere, having been completed in 1924. Back in 1914, the Methodist District Superintendent, Dr. L.S. Rader, preached in Fellsmere, and with 27 people, he organized the Methodist Episcopal Church. By 1917, Fellsmere Methodists had acquired a parsonage. In 1922, Reverend Jameson was appointed pastor to the Fellsmere Church, and he and Mrs. David Cox held a revival in a large tent over a 4-week period, which resulted in about 30 new members. The tent was erected in the southeast corner of Broadway and South Carolina Avenue. The trustees of the church, Clayton E. Nurse, Harold DeLee, and J.P. Nolan, had purchased an old 2-story apartment house across from the church in 1921. They tore it down and used the wood from it to construct the church as it stands today on the present site. Clayton E. Nurse, a building contractor, Harold DeLee, and James Jones were the main carpenters. Construction of the church was started in 1922, and the congregation was able to hold services in the shell of the building that summer. Work was entirely completed by 1924. Methodist Bishop Richardson dedicated the Fellsmere Methodist Episcopal Church and said it was the most beautiful small church he had ever seen. The center stone in the front of the church shows that it was a Livingston mission church. Charles Livingston, a wagon maker before the Civil War, became very wealthy. Upon his death, his last will and testament established the Livingston Mission Fund to be used for the establishment and maintenance of mission churches. Choir director Milford Weigel traveled to Daytona Beach to get the bell, which was installed in the church's bell tower in 1925, and has been rung every Sunday ever since. When Reverend Jameson left the church in 1926, the membership was approximately 90 people. He was followed by a long succession of ministers. In 1955, a hurricane destroyed the bell tower and the spire on top of it. Then in 1994, the church was awarded an $11,600 state historical matching grant, which enabled the spire and bell tower to be rebuilt, the roof replaced, and the windows repaired, and the trim fixed and painted. On September 5, 1993, the Methodist Conference dissolved the church as a United Methodist Church because of declining membership and concerns that the congregation could no longer afford a full-time pastor. However, Luella Cosner and Phyllis Bouvet, long-standing members of the church, saved the church from closing. On November 12, 1994, the church was rededicated as the Fellsmere Historical Church, a non-denominational church answering only to God as its higher authority. The first minister in the rededicated church was Reverend Billy Ferguson, who served from 1994 to 2003. Lou Cosner was instrumental in having the Fellsmere Historical Church placed on the National Register of Historic Places on December 27, 1996. Reverend Jack Hyatt served as minister from 2003 to 2022. John Ross Crooks is the present pastor. Despite all the hurricanes and storms that have occurred over the last century, the church still stands and is open for worship services that are held every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. And the old bell is faithfully rung by younger members of the congregation, signifying the start of the service. The church still welcomes newcomers as it did when it was completed in 1924, and those who step inside will marvel at its craftsmanship of the beautiful wood interior made possible by early Fellsmereans who built it to worship their Creator. If you'd like to know more about the history of Fellsmere Historical Church, you can use your smartphone to read the QR code to access the City of Fellsmere website or use the city's website address as shown on the walking tour brochure.